Hello everybody and welcome to lesson 2. This week our topic is going to be the digital divide, but rather than looking at who does and doesn't have access to technology, we're going to be taking a closer look at a developing problem. Everyone is getting more access to technology. We're starting to see a digital divide with regards to how people are trained to use technology and how technology is implemented, and also the consequences of technology use. These three things, depending upon the socioeconomic status of students and also level of education of the adults, because this isn't just a problem that we see with young folks, but it goes across sort of the lifespan. So now I would encourage you to take a look at the overview because there's a good explanation, and then take a look at the required readings. Now, the two readings that you will see there, the Gangadaran and also Shu et al. Everyone's supposed to read these, but one thing that I highly recommend, and you'll see that in the overview, is the Noguera paper, which is in the supplemental readings. I think this paper is so important that if you wanted to replace Shu et al. With Noguera, I would allow that. I think everyone really needs to read Gangadaran, but you can replace Shu. The reason being is that this report really helps people to think about how we could implement technology in better ways. Now, Noguera isn't specifically talking about technology, but what he's talking about is the need to implement more opportunities for deeper learning. As you see with the course, deeper learning and enhancing higher order learning processes is one of the things that we're going to touch on. So it'd be good to have this Noguera and Darling-Hammond as a background, because there are ideas for how these things can be implemented. They talk about personalization. They talk about the problems that occur in schools right now with regards to the types of education that children are getting. Now, one thing that I will add to this is that if you look at this report and they talk about opportunities for deeper learning, engaging with material, higher order thinking processes, supporting collaboration, etc., these are key processes that are going to be needed in the next 10 to 20 years and so forth. And yet, they are not the types of learning that are supported by the current educational system, which tends to support lower order thinking processes because of standardized tests being more easily able to assess those types of outcomes. Now, there is a divide with regards to who gets access to deeper learning, because private schools, those schools who are paid for, don't have to take standardized tests, and therefore you will see that the deeper learning opportunities are more prominent there. You'll also see the deeper learning opportunities in those schools which have more resources and might be in wealthier areas. So what happens with regards to the digital divide? Other things to take into account, but I am not going to make you read, is that it shows that the more experienced teachers tend to go to wealthier schools, whereas schools that are in areas where there is lower socioeconomic resources, which might have more Latino and African American students, these schools tend to have teachers who are less experienced and who might have also sort of less preparation to teach. Now, the way that this plays out with regards to technology is twofold. First, the less experienced teachers are learning how just to be effective teachers, and those first few years are very, very difficult. You're just kind of getting the routine down, learning how to work with your audience, etc. Therefore, it's more difficult to try these more progressive educational technologies, or to incorporate things like deeper thinking, right? There's also high turnover at these schools. And so what happens is that the students are not getting the same quality of education. Now, secondly, the other thing that you will see is that your more experienced teachers, your teachers who have more preparation, higher levels of education, are going to be more likely to use software applications that might be important for students. And you'll see that if you want to see the shoe paper, you'll see that that's one of the biggest differences that they saw even after they got rid of the problems with access to technology. The other thing is that these more experienced teachers or schools usually do a better job getting their students to understand technology as a tool for building identity. The digital footprint, risk and security and privacy, all these things are not always taught in those schools which are under-resourced. This is a problem because, as you see in the social media use paper, there are differences in regards to how people are using social media depending, again, on socioeconomic status and level of education. Students who have lower levels of education, people in general who have lower levels of education, and who might live in more impoverished areas, tend to post more negative things on social media. The types of things that might prevent you from getting a job. Many companies now, for those of you who do not know, actually have procedures for weeding out potential applicants. Some companies even have HR departments whose sole purpose is to scour the internet in order to weed out certain applicants. What this means is that even if you get students from impoverished areas who are able to succeed in college and get out and are now applying for these, more sought, they still may not get an interview because their social media profiles, their digital footprint may not be the type of footprint that these companies will want. And I think it was Forbes, I can try and find the article for you and post it on Yammer. But Forbes had an article of like 10 things that could eliminate you from a position. And it was something as simple as having a picture with a red Solo cup. So pictures drinking, partying, any sort of homophobic, racial, or sexist post. Anything, there's like a wide variety of things that could get you eliminated from getting an interview. These are not the types of things that many students are aware of. In fact, I teach an undergraduate course which is called Technology and Culture, and these are probably like first or second year undergraduate students. And whenever I hit this topic and I show them that Forbes article, their eyes get wide. and I have students who had never realized that the content that they were posting up there is going to be problematic for them. And then I have students raise their hand, and I ask them, how many of you were taught in school, that there's, better ways to use technology? Everyone raised their hands. I said, how many of you talked about things like digital identity? And the majority. You might still have 5 people with their hands raised out of 40. When I asked them, how many of you learned about the digital footprint and how to craft a digital identity, I usually only get about 1 to 2 students who have their hands up. Now, last semester was the one exception. I had 3 students. Last semester was the first time that one of those 3 students went to a public school. Actually, 2 of the students went to a public school. 1 went to a private school. But the 2 that went, 2 was private, 1 was public. But the student who went to the public school went to a public school in a very rich area that also happened to be in a college town. So of those 40 students, only 3 were prepared. What this says is that there's some really important information that our students need to get, and that there is a divide with regards to who is having access and who does not. So you know, all the students in my class, there was only the one person who had gone to a private school. I mean, the two people who had gone to a private school, everyone else went to a public school here in Pennsylvania. All right, so that will hopefully be a good introduction to this week. I wanted to commend you all on a good first discussion in Yammer last week. I really enjoy trying to get all of you to share your experience with the other readings. You guys did a really good job of sharing that last time and analyzing the readings. And you all asked some really interesting questions with regards to how education is changing. Now, I did respond to some of you yesterday, so do take a look because yesterday it was Tuesday, so there were some additional questions. You can choose to continue the discussion if you like, or we can just move on to this week. One thing that I will tell you is, as of right now, I do not have the requirement like many other courses that require you to post once on Saturday and then on, by Monday or Tuesday. However, I may have to change that if I see that people are not posting. It's really in your benefit to post early because that gives me and your peers more time to interact with your ideas. And I really feel sad for folks when they take the time to post and nobody responds. But that's maybe because folks posted Tuesday night, and so there's no more discussion to be had because the next week begins, we have a new topic, and those, points of discussion are kind of left behind. So please try and post early so that we can have some interesting discussions and so that I can make sure that I can respond and push you all to think a little bit more deeply. Okay? All right, have a really good week. I believe that by next week, we're going to start looking at teams. So if I look at the modules for next week, lesson 3, there's going to be a Google Docs assignment. That means that this week I'm going to put you into teams. To look at your availability for team meetings that you completed in lesson 0, and I will try and use that to group you with other people who have similar availability, okay? These teams are for you to be able to do in-class discussions, which will be assigned, and also to work on a final project should you choose to work collaboratively. If for some reason I in your survey, but it doesn't hurt to reach out to me and email me. Reasons in the past that students haven't been able to do that is because they might work 2 jobs and therefore the availability is severely limited. I also have active military who have been unable to do so, and other crisis management type folks who often have to travel. But besides that, you should be good. All right. Talk to you soon. Have a good week.